Hi everyone, and welcome back to the BISP podcast. Last week we were joined by Mr. Ollie Bates, who runs the golf program here at BISP. But today I have a very special guest, Mr. Anthony Donovan, who specialises in TOK and study skills here at BISP. So let's give him a warm welcome. Morning, Mr. Donovan. How are you?
Morning. Fine, thank you.
Good. I want to start straight off by asking, what do we mean by study skills?
Yeah, it's a good question, because if it's not a hardcore curricular subject, people say, well, what is it? Why are we doing it? But actually, the meaning is in the words. Studying is a skill. Studying requires practice. Studying requires repetition and the development of certain things to make it easier. So the key thing is really it's a new growing area, and we're trying to increase people's meaning and understanding about how to study. It's not just take it for granted students will learn. There's a science, neuroscience, there's a lot of development nowadays in how people learn, and we're trying to make time for that in the curriculum. And I think it's a new growing area, an exciting area of education, to really let children into the secrets of how learning takes place, what would make learning more efficient. They say it's about studying effectively now. So that's what we really want trying to do, really trying to get students to be more effective in their studying.
So would you say that it's important that we teach study skills to older year groups and to go back to the basics and learn again how to study?
I think so, but I think that study skills start from the very beginnings, from ducks to reception to the youngest children. You're beginning to learn skills that are appropriate to the area of study that you're involved in. But absolutely, you mentioned older students. There's no reason why students can't perfect and develop their study skills and become effective or smarter learners and smarter studiers by managing time and organisation right through their career. In fact, actually, the most important thing is that we get it right before they go on to higher education, whereas things like study skills aren't taught formally.
Right, because in university, you sit in a big hall sometimes with a lecturer who is just giving this information verbally, and you have to know how to synthesize it and get it down in your notes.
That's exactly right, and therefore you need a high degree of independence, high degree of self-sufficiency, an effective note-taking system, an effective managing the information system to cope with a large-scale lecture where things can get quite dry, especially after schools are notorious, teachers are notorious for making very colourful, lively, lovely chunk lessons. University don't deliver things like that, so you have to create the colour for yourself.
And what would that look like for you, creating the colour for yourself, as you said?
Creating the colour is about finding creative ways to interpret the information that's been given to you. Everything in learning is about making meaning. We're meaning-making machines. It's about how can I understand this for myself? How can I get this into my understanding, my way of knowing, so that I'm able to communicate it? Because they say whoever does the talking does the learning. And I really like that saying. I heard it before. And if you really know something, you can teach it. So that's one of the main things, and I know you might come on to this later, but what do we do in study skills? Well, we're trying to, if you like, regurgitate the material that the teachers have to get across in order to pass exams. There will be content. So, and I remember one of your podcasts previously, you mentioned the word process is really important. Stay with the process or follow the process. And absolutely right, there is a process and the information process from getting information to getting it back out again is going to be really important. And the other thing to say is that quite often the GCSEs do tend to keep students quite concrete because it's a factual. The GCSEs require a certain amount of content information to be repeated and used and show learning. By the time it gets IB or even A-levels, you've got to show the application. You've got to be able to say now, I've got these skills. I can now interpret, I can analyze, I can synthesize. I can use the information in a creative way.
And so what do your lessons consist of to teach the students, again, how to study?
Yeah. So we've got a formal program now in the year 10, and I really applaud BISP for this, because we have put in time, and many other schools are operating different programs. There's a universal learning program that's now spreading throughout Europe. It does align itself very closely with well-being, managing your emotions in well-being, reducing anxiety, managing stress, because unless you're enjoying stuff, unless it's fun and okay, it's unlikely that you actually remember things. So to answer your question there, we've got to do some nuts and bolts. This is the nuts and bolts, if you like. Or another metaphor would be, we are the cement around the bricks. If you imagine a brick wall, all the bricks, the content, we're the bit that sort of cements it together, holds it together, binds it together. But yeah, we have identified, and Jamie Wheeler has been very involved in putting a website together for us of skills that parents now can look at. It's on the school website, of things, useful, practical tips that you can do. So yes, we do. We do introduce them to a formal note-taking system, and we happen to use Cornell because we like the fact it divides the page up. Mm-hmm. We have note-taking systems, organizational systems, how to organize your material. The biggest thing I'm really interested now, though, is in this sort of associated learning, associating things, linking things. So, and that often can involve icons or sketch notes or flashcards, where we link content with other information in order to help develop memory and association and visuals. One of the big mottos is, if you like, verbal to visual. All this written information, if I can get it down, if I can get into a few flow charts, mind maps, images, spidergrams, redoing the work like that is creative for the brain. It makes it interesting and way nicer to review, and way better than just really reading your notes or rewriting your notes.
So let me see if I understand this. In making learning more visual, note-taking more visual, or associative, as you mentioned, can it be more easy to process the information rather big blocks of text?
Yeah, I think a really important thing there is to remember that we are all so different. We are different learners, we're different human beings. We process information, we decode differently to each other. We all have our preferences. And I think that's why the term now about personalizing learning is so important. Back in the 80s, we talked about the VAC system, visual, audio, kinesthetic. We thought that people had definite preferences, and we probably do, but we don't have a preference to the point where we don't use the other methods. We just have slight preferences towards one more than another. So that was a starting point in getting this whole thing going, really, this visual. How should I see it? How should I hear it? How can I do something with it? And that's what I mean by personalizing, finding out what it is best for you, how you learn best, how you can get your information into a way that you understand it best for yourself.
I see. And is study skills a time to experiment with what learning method works best for us?
Absolutely, I think I like that. In fact, I think that is a key issue about experimenting, having the confidence as well. This is that fundamental underlines everything in education. Having the confidence to try something out. So yeah, I like sketches. Maybe I can link sketch notes with my Cornell. I can have a note-taking system that involves sketches, or it involves icons, or it might involve flow diagrams and maps. Some people find it messy. Some people find it beautiful. So, and that's just that's us as humans, isn't it?
Definitely. I think traditional notes with bullet points, writing, not so much visual, has become really common. But as you said, I think it's time to reconsider this, make it more visual, whatever works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when we really realize the power, if I said to you tree, you wouldn't picture TREE, you'd picture a tree. You know,
I just pictured a tree, actually.
Great, excellent. And that's an example of how our brains work visually. We think like that. And if I can start saying things like that and say, okay, there's a tree. Tree's got lovely branches. It becomes a beautiful example for the main idea, the sub-branches, the other branches. Can I attach my information? Then can I picture what part of the tree that I put that information? The brain needs links. It needs places to attach itself. And then we can open up other windows, if you like, other bits of information. And because in an exam, it's very easy and possible to go blank and suddenly forget everything. But if you remember, hang on, where was I now? What part of the tree am I at? What could I link? What could I extend? How can I increase the exploration of this? And visuals such as that could be a way for some people.
And what you said about going blank, it can happen to all of us in any stressful situation. But if we have the ability to make that linking in our brain, then we can save ourselves in those difficult situations.
Absolutely right. In fact, that's one of the key things now. We're way more in touch with the mental health side of things. Going blank could trigger a mini panic attack, a mini moment of anxiety.
Which might not help you think of any more new ideas.
Absolutely right. In fact, if your brain goes into a mini panic feeling, it's unlikely that your physiology is thinking about anything else other than escape or fighting or flighting. So that's part of what we do as well. We say, okay, well, what's your strategy? What's your stuck chart? What's on your stuck chart? How do you get yourself out of it? Just like right now, and you're learning to present this thing very well. You're thinking, right, okay, if the conversation dries up, where do I go? What do I do? And we need that in our learning. We need these strategies to manage those anxious moments, because they will come.
Definitely. Thank you for that. So now that we've discussed the study skills side of things, I'd like to move on to the TOK, which is a core component of the IB, my listeners. And I think IB being relatively new, not a lot of people know what TOK is. So could you tell us what it stands for and what it means?
Yeah. In fact, before you get me rolling on the TOK board, which I'm very enthusiastic and I love about, there was one question, Chloe, you did mention to me before, which I would like just to quickly tie up.
Sure.
You said to me, what do we do actually other than teach those skills? And I just wanted to say the other part of the coin, we teach the skills of flashcards or note-taking, etc. But what I try and do in a creative way is to do an application, so a marketplace, a sell, an advertising, explaining to Martians, etc. So I do a whole bunch of practical things, and I've had little kids come in from the other year groups for primary, and I get my study skill kids to teach the younger ones things to make things. So that's part of. I just wanted to get that point in, because
Sure.
I know a lot of year 10 students will go, oh, what are we going to be doing? And yes, you're right. What are you doing? Well, we are trying to make it dynamic and fun and interactive. Anyway, so back to TOK.
Okay, back to TOK. That's okay. We can interlink.
Yeah.
So, what does TOK stand for?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's it stands for epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge, but we couldn't call it epistemology because it sounds just a bit too convoluted and a bit too tricky. So it's a made-up kind of word, really. It's not really a subject. I'd say TOK is an experience, and I love it. And I think that the IB were very brave to put this on as the core. It's the core essential ingredient to the whole IB. It's the piece where you have the skills to explore and think and question in order to use that throughout your course and in life as well. It is about your international mindedness, your global citizenship. It's about these skills, the questioning. The fundamental motto of our subject is, how do you know? How can we be sure? What's the evidence for this? What's the justification? How reliable is this? So we want students to have a core language of interpreting the world and events.
And TOK, though, that stands for the theory of knowledge?
Yes.
What do we mean by the theory of knowledge?
Yeah, how knowledge came to be, the theory of it, how we came to know, how knowledge came to be produced, or how is knowledge acquired, how is knowledge disseminated. So knowledge or knowing that we so easily say this is the truth, this is true. Well, how do we know that? What unconscious biases are present? What do I bring to this discussion, to this knowledge, which may actually be influencing in a particular direction? And to become conscious of that I'm viewing things from a particular perspective, a particular position. I may have a cultural bias, an ethical bias. So we want students to be aware of all these things, the underlying bed of it, really. And I say to most of the students, well, what's it like? Well, it's a bit like a United Nations ambassador. It's a bit like an investigative journalist. It's that person that's not afraid to ask the uncomfortable questions. And yes, maybe it does ruffle feathers. And maybe it is one of those subjects where we just don't know the answer. We might not even get the answer, but we've had the discussion.
So, in that way, would you say it's not really like any other subject because we're being inquisitive and we're going and asking about the unknown? We're talking about things that aren't so typically taught at schools.
Absolutely right. In fact, that's a bit, again, like my metaphor earlier of the concrete around the bricks. TOK is the same thing. So there's the link there, really, because we are saying This is a way of looking. We want you to question. Every IB teacher who teaches a level has an idea, has a responsibility to using TOK thinking and questioning. Now, I've had some colleagues that say to me, Mr. Donovan, I just don't like TOK. I don't like not knowing. I don't like going to class not knowing. I'm a teacher. I need to know. What I say, for me, it's the opposite. I love going in and not knowing. I love saying to students, well, what do you think? What do you know? So the first module is called Knowledge and the Knower. I mean, how have you come to know things? What do you keep? What do you discard? What is your wealth, your bank of knowledge, of ideas that you have about things? And are they being shaped? And in this new era of polarizing, you're either this or that, you're either with us or against us, it's either this or that. This is what we're breaking down, getting away from that. And there's a dangerous trend in the world right now to do this, to polarize and to separate the right getting righter, the left getting lefter. Well, hang on a second. Where's the middle ground? Where's the common sense? Where's the logic? Where's the emotion as well? Where's the feeling in here? So this is all part of our exploration. So if I just say this, we love real world events. We're really interested. The new assessment is about an exhibition of real world objects. You bring that to the table and say, well, this is how I see TOK manifesting itself in the real world. Through this object, I can explore different areas of knowledge, of how knowledge has come to be known, and how it can be justified, or how it can be increased, or how it's disseminated. And then we can extend that body of knowledge of other fellow people that know it. They can increase your knowledge and understanding. So the key parts of TOK really is about getting back to intuition and imagination. Okay, well, what are the consequences? What's next? What might it be? If this, then what's next? Yeah.
I'd like to pick up on what you said about what if. So TOK is really about asking questions. Why are we doing things? Why is something the way it is?
Yeah.
So can I ask you, why do students take TOK as a part of their IB course?
Yeah, well, it is compulsory, and the IB and the Infinite Wisdom have decided that, and wonderfully so. And it does, people say, what subject is it like? Well, it does have a philosophical element, it does have a psychological element, it does have a humanities element, it has an artistic element, it has a scientific element. So it has all these things, and we explore that. I think you might be coming on to what actually do you do again, a little bit, well, what do you do? And what is it really about? And yes, it is skills, but we do look at real world events, and we explore those real world events in terms of the knowledge that's being created, where the knowledge has come from. You know, the role and the power of media and social media is such a huge impact. That's exactly what TOK is about now, to say, okay, well, where's it coming from? You know, who are the influences, if you like, of the knowledge, of the information? What am I believing? Is what I'm believing trustworthy? Is it reliable? These are the key things.
It sounds as though in TOK we really need an inquisitive and curious mindset.
Yeah.
Would you say that's what students need to come into the class having?
Yeah.
An inquisitive, curious mindset?
I think that's the nutshell. I think that's the hammer on the nail. That's exactly it. Curious and inquisitive, caring, being interested in your world, not just taking it for granted. Absolutely right. Yeah, being wanting to be responsible, wanting to question things. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Curiosity and inquisitiveness. Yeah, the curious, open mind. Yeah, brilliant.
And how do you get students interested and engaged? I think sometimes we're just looking for the right answer. We're looking for abstract. Did I get an A or did I get a C? Where are the right answers? How can I succeed in this course?
Yeah.
With TOK, I would say it's not so much like that. You have to do the digging yourself.
Yeah,
is that true?
Yeah, definitely. It's the digging. And I was talking to Mr. Perkins about this, the IB coordinator, and I feel there's a feel about TOK. I want it to be different. I want students to actually enjoy it separate from the content subjects that they have. And very much so, it is about, we want students to be active inquirers, to discuss things, and to really, it really is a critical thinking skill, actually, a critical thinking course, where we learn skills, again, of how to analyse, how to evaluate, how to extend the discussion. and how to be conscious of the biases that might be at play, our own as well, our unconscious biases. And biases actually have a positive aspect as well as a negative. So to keep that duality, that balance, yeah. So I think that's essentially what it is about. Did you want to ask about the areas of knowledge that we do then?
Yes,
Yeah.
we were going to get onto that. We do talk about the areas of knowledge in TOK or an AOK. It's got a good ring to it, right? What are these areas of knowledge?
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I did read your questions beforehand. It can't be too completely openly philosophical. We do have to apply it. So the IB have chosen 5 main areas of knowledge, and some optional areas as well. So we want to cover the sciences, the human sciences, the arts, history and mathematics. They are the fundamental 5 main areas. And I teach the maths, and that's wonderful, because it was my biggest challenge subject as a student, as a learner. I found the language of maths, the decoding of maths, a real challenge, and it didn't work very well with me, and I struggled to get to the basic levels. But now I actually teach it, but I don't teach maths.
Just to clarify, these areas of knowledge are not teaching essential maths or psychology, human sciences. It's an area of knowledge in TOK. Would you care to explain what that means?
Yeah, that's right. So we look at how knowledge has been created. What knowledge has been created? Where did it come from in maths? Is maths knowledge invented, or is it discovered? Is it just about patterns? Is it just so people like Fibonacci, for instance, has recognised that numbers are in nature. It's always been there. And the minute the first human cognitive brain set sight on the sun and the moon, they wanted to measure it. How far away is it? How big is it? Why is it changing shape? Why is it changing size? Where is its position? So the questioning of humans, we try and get back, which is why we cover another area about indigenous knowledge. Where have some of the most fundamental, basic human questions about life and our existence, where have they come from? And the beautiful realization that some of the questions we had then are still not really able to be answered right now. So that becomes one of the most interesting parts of the course. But just touching upon those things, history, can the past be told? Can the past be known? As opposed to a historian would say, well, yeah, this is history. Well, whose history? Who wrote it? Where does it come from? How reliable was it? And this is what we do with all those subjects. And I particularly enjoy art as well in the course as well, because about the audience's interpretation being different from what the artist intended. And this discovery of, well, what is aesthetic? And then we linked, maths and art have a link. There's an aesthetic branch, the perfect combination of numbers created. So we look at why is science so reliable in the time of COVID now? We're really relying on science for our answers about what we're doing, and so we explore that. How effective? How is science? What are the methods in science that make it so reliable and so proof-worthy? And why? And is art? Can art be compared? Can art be reliable? Is art as valuable as science if it doesn't really prove anything? So that's the sort of discussion you have. So you've got a handle on all these areas of knowledge, which you can go then into your HLs and then say, okay, well let's have a look at the knowledge again, and hopefully the student will use those skills to apply it in their course.
To me, it sounds like in TOK we're talking about the abstract ideas, the things that we don't really see immediately there. If we could use the analogy of maybe a tree, you don't really see all the roots, do you? Values, ethics of something being produced, which is this tree in a metaphor.
Yes, that's very nice, and that's why we have a knowledge framework. So we look at scope. Well, what aspect of it are we looking at? What are the methods or tools? How was this knowledge created? And as you said quite rightly, perspectives and ethics are our two biggest friends. Well, what are the different perspectives on this? Could I change my perspective? Perspective is everything, isn't it? Because actually, perspective actually comes down to understanding and empathy. If I'm able to see something, I can understand it and understand someone else's perspective, then we really are developing something there and developing a skill for life there. But of course, we're all hypocrites because we don't always apply these skills. We know them, we have them, but there are times when we don't always apply them. We just want to get on with information, on with things. And there is a sort of a circular nature about some of this. And sometimes, you just have to get on and learn the facts and take what you need to learn. So you can't stay too philosophical for too long.
And moving in another direction, why is it important to participate in TOK? You mentioned that it's not really a subject. You don't have to typically, like we would, sit down and take notes. How do we participate in a TOK lesson?
Great point. I'm glad you said that, because a very important thing in education nowadays is student voice, student ownership, the role. And if you don't have your voice, you lose your say. And if you don't have your say, we've lost your opinion. One of the most important parts of any young person's development is to feel that they count, that they have a point of view to make, and to have that. So debates, discussions are essential. We want that. We want students to plan things. Something I need to mention earlier about as well, one of the things we're interested in is, well, what is your claim? What is your stance? Where are you coming from with your point of view? And it's okay to have a claim. You can't be completely philosophical all the time. Say, well, it might, if you're too relative, you don't have anything. Oh, it could be this, it could be that. But it's important to say, no, actually, I believe this is the way. This is right. This is wrong. And that's important to say that.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Is it important to, as you said, to have a say, to have a stance on something? But would you say it's important to check all your sources, check both sides of the story before making your argument or taking a stance on something?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So again, we're into strategies again. Okay, if I'm not sure and my emotions kick in and I start, it becomes an ego thing and I can't lose, becomes a battle, then I've got to recognize that and say, actually, I don't have the right information now. I don't have enough evidence. There's something that doesn't feel right for me, but I'll come back to you. I'll investigate that further. So yeah, there are very important arguments, face savers, if you like, that because we don't know everything, and that's one of the beautiful things of TOK. Quite often it is based on our opinion, on our feelings, and we have to test that out of other people. So going back to what you said earlier, it's important to have your voice and to be brave enough to actually say, this is what I think, and brave enough that people say, well, actually, I don't agree with you, and that's okay. We can look at that. Let's look at it from another point of view. Are you open to the possibility to change? I think that's and the words fixed mindset nowadays are very important to break that fixed mindset, to be more open, because very few of us really do know. Sometimes we're holding on to knowledge and information for reasons that actually might not even belong to us. They might be influenced by other external factors.
Right. And linking again to that key word that we use in TOK, perspective, it is acceptable to have your own perspective and your own opinion on something, just so long as we value putting yourself in other people's perspective, understanding from another point of view.
Absolutely right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't have our own. Is that right?
Absolutely. You must have your own. You must have a starting point. You must say this is a stance. And when you come to write your essay, which is another important thing, is discussion, you'll say, okay, my thesis is, my argument is, my belief is this, my knowledge claim, my claim is this, and my counterclaim. So if I make a claim, I must also be conscious of my counterclaim. Well, I have my claim, but I've also got another, so I have looked at the alternative arguments. But quite right, we have to move forward, and that's how evolution works, by people making claims and improving it. Like, I think it was Einstein said, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. We're learning one thing, standing on the next idea, and developing and moving forwards. So yes, very important not to be afraid to take a risk. As for risk taking is an IB learner profile thing, risking what you say. And yes, I might have to say, well, actually, I didn't realize that, but actually maybe I do hold some beliefs and values that aren't acceptable. They need updating. They've gone past their sell-by date. So yeah, very important.
Right. So from my understanding, TOK really prepares us for the real world. As you mentioned, beliefs, perspectives. We're going to meet so many different people in the world, and we have to be comfortable with different perspectives.
Yes, absolutely right. And I just say to the students, the golden rule for TOK is to show up, just take an interest. This is your life, this is your world, it's your opportunity to hone your skills. And I do say to students, when you do get to university, there's some very bright, sharp young minds out there that will take topics to pieces, and you've got to be ready to stay there. And I do think there is a danger, some ways, of passivity. Students are being afraid to say things in case they're caught out, or they're challenged, and there's a fear element. It's easier to say nothing. Don't commit yourself.
Well, because if you say nothing, you cannot get it wrong, essentially.
Yeah.
But then again, going back to risk-taking.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I would really encourage students to get involved, take part, show up, show some enthusiasm. This is your chance. You know, it's a beautiful window. It's a wonderful time of your lives. And I say to the students, year 11, 12, 13, your mind is expanding at a massive rate of knots. It's ready for information. It's ready for thinking. We don't want to close down windows. We want to open them up and thinking about the next level of investigation, because university requires creative thinking. It needs new thinking. They don't want to come and give you more information. They want you to create a research question. They want you to extend knowledge and move on from it. It's not about like collecting the goodies, collecting I know everything about this subject. No, you don't. We know some things, and it's important as a personal voice then to take that on and to link with other people's ideas to extend our knowledge in areas.
Right. And is this what you hope TOK students will take from their lesson? Something to bring to the wider world or their future education?
Yeah, absolutely right. That's your second nutshell for the day. That's exactly what it is. But I will be honest and say that, you know, it takes a while to get students convinced about this. I have lovely parent interviews. When I tell parents a bit about this, and I hope that people hear this now, they say, oh yeah, I like that. That'd be interesting. Wish I did something like that at school. And it's often this living life forwards, understanding it backwards, isn't it? Because it's,
right.
If only I'd known had the confidence to question things like that. But at the time, it seems to some students like, oh no, IB is difficult. It's got enough to do. It's another unnecessary burden, I suppose. But there are up to 3 extra TOK points you can get for your IB combined with the EE. They are called bonus points, and they are a bonus. They can actually shift your ability to get a place. So there is an extrinsic reward for doing TOK as well.
So, going beyond from what skills that we get, if we participate in those lessons, it can benefit our overall IB grade. So it is worth participating, listeners. And Mr. Donovan, what have you learnt from teaching TOK?
Actually, I think it's, for first and foremost, it's actually given me a whole new lease of life. It's increased my opportunity to learn a new subject. And I don't like to stay within one key core area for long, and I'm interested in the creative areas. So yeah, it has actually given me a whole fresh viewpoint. It's given me a new community of knowers. I love chatting and discussing with I've been to several workshops. TOK teachers are different. It's one of these things we all seem to know. We're all some people love it and a bit odd. And that's great. And I really like that. I like that difference. So it's given me fresh eyes, a fresh view. It's made me passionate to really to pass this on to students. I really think this is something that's necessary. But I do seem to choose subjects. I'm waving the flag for something. And some people say, oh my goodness, do we have to do that? And I'm saying, this is so wonderful. And I try to inject the enthusiasm into it and try to get students, like the study skills as well, to get the meaning. So if I understand why I'm doing it, it could be useful, a useful thing to take forward, a useful thing to invest in.
Do you have a certain approach to get the students interested, to inject some of that enthusiasm into them?
Yeah, I like the chunking system. I like to have chunks of activity. I want you to talk a bit. I'm going to talk a bit. We're going to argue together a little bit. We're going to watch something. There's TED Talks, BBC Reel, wonderful resources for knowledge and information and perspective out there. The whole TED Talk thing works very well with TOK because it's an opportunity to express the points of view and then extend the discussions. So I do tend to show good clips. I mean, when I first started teaching, there wasn't TED Talks. There wasn't hardly any internet really. So the colour that we can bring to a subject like this now is just incredible. Yeah, the opportunity is amazing.
We are lucky with all the resources we have, so it's best to make use of them.
Yes.
To wrap up our podcast today, will TOK, I have 2 final questions. Will TOK always be relevant? In 100 years, can you still see it being taught in schools?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. I think it'd be more relevant and more important than ever before. And I think there will be a fusing. I think I will be very honest and say the main curriculum subjects and the curriculum organisation hasn't really evolved over the last 200 years probably. It's still very much a desk, learn, write sort of approach.
Yes.
I think this being assessed on how you feel and how you think and how you create that sort of design learning model is going to be something for the future. It's going to adapt. They keep saying the jobs for the future don't even exist yet, and we know that's true. The jobs for today didn't exist 10 years ago.
That's
so
true.
Personally, I think this is the subject that's open enough to encompass any and every area.
Okay, and finally, my last question for you would be, for the future TOK students, if they're listening to this right now, what advice or reassurance would you give them about this course?
Yeah, I would say just try to soak it up. Be a sponge. See what it's about. Develop your inquiring mind, because it is an inquiry-based system, the IB, really. It's very much about you as a young learner inquiring, getting your knowledge, getting your perspective. It's yours. Take ownership of it. Using your skills, you can personalize this system, and it is a learning adventure. It's something that you take with you. You should be able to take these skills into university, and I do see that with your daughter, my daughter, Eloise, other sister. Have shown that the IB was useful at university. You know, it does things that A levels don't do, because A levels are a very content-heavy, driven area, and I do think the IB gives students these what we call the soft skills, these interpersonal skills, these resourceful skills, these resilience and some reciprocity skills to relate and find out from each other, share points of view, and to be reflective. So those fundamental skills, I've named those 4 R's. I really do believe that the TOK is the provider of the core of those things. So we're back to where we started, at the core. But it does take time to convince and convert people to believe that, yes, this is useful for them.
And maybe along the stages of life, we'll see its purpose in different ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I do actually believe that's a good point. It shows up sometimes and it appears. Sometimes you're thinking, oh yeah, we're discussing that, weren't we? Yeah. And now you've got a handle, like our thinking box. We've got strategies. If I'm asked to say something, I've got a thinking box. I can define the topic. I can then give a claim. I can give another claim, and I can have a wrap up. So I've got systems that I can immediately respond to any issue rather than that I don't know, which we don't believe in TOK, because there's always something we do know.
Very well put. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Donovan.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you enjoy TOK as well.
I do. I'm an active TOK learner.
Excellent.
Today we talked about study skills and TOK with Mr. Donovan. In study skills, it's all about going back to the basics and learning how to learn again, readjusting our methods, and finally just being open to new things. And in TOK, it's really more about the unknown and exploring what is not there in front of our very eyes, but digging underneath and seeing what knowledge we can procure. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.